We're joined in studio by Reeve Collins, the co-founder and chairman of STBL. Welcome.
Great to see you.
So Reeve, I want to start by asking you, I've heard you speak a lot about the fact that you believe the stablecoin ecosystem is broken. Why do you think it's broken in an asset class that is now over, 250 billion in assets, has some challenges?
Yes, well, I wouldn't call it broken, but it's time for it to evolve. So stablecoins now have been around for over 10 years, and it's laid the foundation for what we know of the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem. And more importantly, it's changed how the world moves money and how a lot of companies do business. Lots of efficiencies. However, it's time for it to evolve because there's two real challenges with the current stablecoin 1.0 ecosystem. One of the main challenges, and a traditional complaint that we would get all of the time, is where's the backing? Is it really collateralized? How do we know that all the money's there? That's one of the biggest problems. The other one is these centralized issuers are making so much money. The users, while they're the ones giving them all the money, they don't get to participate in any of the upside. So Stablecoin 2.0, something that we've coined, and it's a new technology and it's the evolution of the stablecoin that we're rolling out, solves both of those issues.
So let's talk about, focus on these two items you mentioned, right? So I think for the benefit of your audience, obviously you're the co-founder of STBL, and I think what you guys are trying to do there is to give back some of the yield that currently is going, in your second example, to the stablecoin issuers, to the community and to users. Can you maybe explain to us how does that work? And also if you believe that it will become mainstream in the coming years, that the yield of the underlying assets goes to the users of these stablecoins.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I'll address both of those points. I'll start with the collateral, because that one's pretty straightforward. We know that that's kind of been an opaque issue in the past. But now that there's this RWA narrative and these high-quality assets, such as Treasuries and money market funds and other high-quality traditional assets, are coming on-chain, those are what's used to back stablecoins. Those are now tokenized. So now with Stable, you can utilize these tokenized treasuries to be the collateral. So now it's always transparent. 24/7, you're going to know exactly where the collateral is and how much there is, and that it matches the stable coins in circulation. So that's a really key point. And secondly, the yield. So people for a while have realized, okay, these centralized issuers are getting all the yield. The first solution was a yield-bearing stablecoin. The challenge with that is it becomes a security. So it's not freely trading. There's a lot of friction there. And also you have to sit on it to get that yield, so it's really an investment. It's not a utility. You can't spend it. So we've solved that, and the way we've solved it is when you post that collateral, we mint two tokens. We split the yield. So the yield comes into an NFT. It's the tokenized income stream from that treasury. And then the principal backs USST. So USST is our universal stablecoin, similar to USDT and USDC, freely trading around the world, backed by the principal from Treasuries. But the key difference is, think about the $200+ billion that have flowed into stablecoins. All of that yield goes to a couple centralized issuers. Now all of that money, the people who put that in and mint the stablecoin, they're going to get the yield. So now the collateral's on chain, the users get the yield. And so yes, I definitely believe that's the future.
So it kind of democratizes the access to the yield of a lot of these stable coins. What do you believe, Reeve, is the impact of the Genius Act on products like yours? Because obviously there's a requirement that the assets have to be held in cash-to-cash equivalents, but also on US Treasuries. How do you see that impacting models like yours where the yield is separated?
Yeah, so in the US, our stablecoin will be Genius Act compliant, and that just means that you have to utilize essentially treasuries to back those specific stablecoins, especially if you want that stablecoin to be accepted on the exchanges within the US. However, there will become a bifurcation because treasuries have a certain amount of yield that are generated. Then you can have stable coins that are accepted in the rest of the world, where you can have higher yielding instruments like credit funds and different things that may be 5 to 10% instead of 2 to 5%. And it's going to depend on the ecosystem that issues that stablecoin, because the next big narrative, when you think about stablecoin 1.0, it's the exchanges where all those stablecoins moved around. But in stablecoin 2.0, ecosystems, large companies and institutions will have their own branded stablecoin. And when they have their own branded stablecoin, it might not be Genius Act compliant because they want a little more yield than just Treasuries. So we have built the technology that enables that full flexibility for ecosystems to create their own token and brand their own currency.
You know, Reeve, talking about yield, there's a big debate in the U.S., as you know, for Genius Act, as a Genius Act explicitly bans the token issuers from providing yield. But obviously now there's a lot of lobbying from the banks against the crypto exchanges to offer that yield, often the yield that is generated by lending and other methodologies. How do you think that restriction will have an impact on what you're building, but also on the future of the stablecoin ecosystem?
I mean, it's such a great point, and it's so amusing to me that you know that this idea is coming and it can't be stopped when the regulations are specifically being put in place to stop progression, to stop the evolution, because they know, the banks know how much they'll lose if people start getting yield, but it's inevitable. And our solution actually solves for that by stripping the yield and creating a distinctly separate token. So our technology platform enables full regulatory compliance.
Kind of stripping that from the asset itself. You know, you were one of the co-founders of Tether, and back in the day, when you look at Tether, did you ever imagine that the stablecoin ecosystem was going to be so big so quickly?
Well, I mean, it's been 10 plus years, so I don't know how quickly that is. But however, to create a new monetary infrastructure and a new global currency that's accepted all the way around the world and truly has transformed lives for a lot of people, it's an honor to be a part of that. And, you know, it was always kind of in our wildest dreams, but to see how far it's come is always just humbling. It's amazing.
But do you believe there'll be, I mean, you mentioned before how there'll be potentially separation between companies that, let's say, they want to have in their own ecosystem, their own stablecoin. But do you believe there'll be one on the regulatory side as well? I mean, Tether is a very good example. They have USAT for the US market and USDT, the cash cow for the, let's say, globally. Do you believe we're going to see that separation over the next couple of years of US, non-US, and potentially other jurisdictions like China and the EU as well?
Yes, I do. But what's going to take place in a few years also is there'll be clearinghouses, and these stable coins, it won't matter which flavor you're using, because on the back end they'll all have an interchange and maybe a slight fee or shift to make sure that they're fungible. Because what's going to happen also, the next big narrative, as we know, is AI. And AI is going to significantly transform how transactions are done on the blockchain, because the blockchain is very complicated and it's difficult to manage all of those things. AI is going to do it for you, so the users can talk into their wallet and say, I want it to go, I want it the fastest, cheapest, most profitable way. And so AI will route that for you.
Definitely the era where finance happens behind the scenes without us realizing it. That was super interesting. That was Reeve Collins, the co-founder and chairman of STBL. Again, who said that stablecoins is a boring ecosystem? Lots going on in that space.